today we have Mr. Ravi Abeysuriya, who is the advocacy chair of CFA Sri Lanka and board director. Hello, Mr. Abeysuriya. We welcome you to our studio and this talk. What we would really like to know, in a nutshell, what is financial literacy mean?
Right. Actually, it's a very, very pertinent question today. If you look at Sri Lanka, we have something called print literacy. In other words, you are able to speak and write, whether it's Sinhala mainly, but sometimes even English, majority. I would say over 99% can converse in a language. Whereas when it comes to financial literacy, which is basically financial know-how, knowledge, we have one of the poorest statistics. The normal global standard is about 65% of the population should be able to understand money, how to make use of money and financial health. But unfortunately in Sri Lanka, we have only about 35% of our people who are able to transact and do good kind of progress in using their financial resources. So most important thing is you have to build up some money over time. When you after your schooling is over, you start a job, and at that time you need to build up some kind of fund base for your success, and that's what is all about financial literacy is.
Right. Now, that's I think a very essential thing. Long time ago we used to have a subject of commerce for all of us, but now I don't think it's no longer there. Now, what categories of people actually do you think needs this, or who are the worst affected by the lack of it?
Yeah, actually we had two questions. The categories of people are all strata, whether you are having money or not having money, so called the poor and the rich. Still we find the mistakes they do due to lack of financial literacy is huge. I'll first give an example. There are judges and doctors who invest in kind of unethical companies which are mobilizing savings. Those are maybe regulated ones or unregulated ones, who by way of deposits they mobilize savings. And name a few: Pramukha Bank, CIFL. People have lost money, and if you look at their type of people who have invested, it is not the poorest of the poor who has put money in this. There are doctors and judges and lawyers and all kinds of people who are invested in Pramukha Bank. Likewise, to answer your second question, who are the people who are most vulnerable? It is actually the poorest of the poor, because they are desperate either to earn a decent return on their measly savings or to take some kind of a loan facility for their progress of their business venture, or sometimes a small business they are doing, they want to borrow something. Now when they borrow, there are unscrupulous parties who lend, who put them into deep trouble. So these groups are, I would say, the informal sector, who are not able to borrow from mainly established banks or finance companies, who are dependent on microfinance. But I won't categorize every microfinance as bad, but there are certain companies which when they lend, they charge very high interest rates, could be as high as 120%. Now it's unimaginable, but that's the truth. So we see this happening in a big way in Sri Lanka because people lack financial know-how.
Yes. Now, I know especially these vendors, people who even hire a trolley to carry the goods, the laborer takes money on interest for the day, and then he pays that back in the evening, depending on what he earns, and then he still has to pay, say, the higher charge plus a small, it can be a very small amount, 10 rupees a day or 50 rupees a day. And then again you get the mid group, I would say, like grocery shops and small business. I have seen collectors go on motorbikes with little books and they take money every day. Common sight in Maradana, these spare part shops. They borrow a lot of money. So, is this a vulnerable, opening them to the vulnerability of being conned? Or
Not everybody.
right.
There are certain types of people who are encouraged to borrow for consumption. As long as you are smart, you are managing your cash flows, where you borrow say 100 rupees or say 1000 rupees in the morning and able to generate 150 rupees, you are able to pay the 10 rupees for the day. It's okay, because ultimately you are left with 140 rupees for the day, which is fine, because you are in the entrepreneurial business who is able to generate money. Whereas there are people who will borrow 1000 rupees and consume either liquor or food. Then how are you going to pay back? What they will do is they will go to another person and borrow when the 1000 rupees is demanded, or 1000 plus the interest is demanded. So that is a vicious circle you are getting into. Now that is where some people are getting into trouble. Or products which you use. Sometimes you may buy a television or phone and think, okay, I can pay back. So you keep buying like that several products, you may end up in a situation where your monthly interest plus the capital repayment, say you may be borrowing for a certain period, maybe 3 years or whatever, is more than you are able to afford to pay back, because you are being pushed to consume. Consumption level borrowing is what is very, very dangerous. If you are in the business and you are able to generate, that's fine.
That's fine. Good. That of course brings me to a very interesting point in the whole borrowing scenario, credit cards. Because now I have seen credit cards come up with fantastic offers. Not only that, there was a credit card company that offered to buy your debt and pay you back. You know, that you can pay at a no interest rate or a flat rate. And so I told them, actually when they approached me, I said, this offer can't be so good. There has to be a catch, right? Because no one gives anything for free, and no matter how good it looks, they have to make a profit and they make it off you. So tell me the danger that people fall into by using credit cards. I mean, I think a lot of people don't know, they just get into a vicious circle. If you could elaborate a bit on
Yes, actually, if you use a credit card for convenience and pay the full amount every month, absolutely no problem. It's very good, and make use of it as a debit card. It's very much a debit card, because monthly you pay, so you get some credit for maybe 30 days or 45 days or whatever period, and you pay it on a monthly basis, no problem. What can happen to you is two things. One is, once you get used to a credit card, you may start spending more than you can afford to pay that monthly installment. That not the installment, but the full amount. Then you go on an installment basis, where credit card company will charge 24% to 28%, different banks, different rates, but at the minimum 24%. So you are paying about 2% a month, okay? And then what happens is, this starts growing. The credit compounds. Interest on interest keeps growing, and you end up in a situation where you are unable to repay that loan. So that is very, very dangerous. Then the next danger that can happen, the second aspect is, you may get carried away with discounts and tend to spend because of the discount. If the discount is not there, you won't spend, but you have to pay still a certain percentage of that money. Even if you get 50% discount, you have to pay 50% the balance, which means you may end up increasing your monthly amount you are to pay. There is a third aspect which you can get caught in credit cards, that is zero interest schemes. A lot of credit cards promote something called zero interest, where you can go on a foreign trip or buy a certain household goods at zero interest, where you are given say 12 months or 24 months of period to pay. Now the danger here is, the credit card company may charge you as soon as you default the monthly installment. So, if you are having strict financial discipline and have the capacity to pay, it is well and good to take these zero interest schemes. But the danger is, if you miss it, you get hammered with the interest payment as well as the penalty, because you didn't pay the minimum amount for that month. So, if you happen to forget, the bank makes the money.
So, this is, as you say, it's a honey trap.
Yes, it is a bit of a trap. If you are very well disciplined and you are able to control, it's fine.
Fine.
So, that is why people are encouraging debit cards. Then only what
You have,
you can pay.
spend.
Same facility, convenience rather than carrying cash, but you don't get into that trap. Nowadays, we have a lot of apps that are that will pay. You know, that's called payment app, like FreeMe, where you can just show the phone and there is a way of capturing that, and you can pay using phone apps, which is also very much like a debit card. You have to have the money. Credit cards, if you have the discipline, that's fine.
If it's not, you are
in trouble.
in very, very difficult. Yes. Now, credit cards are very widely used. But what I want to know is, now there are other complaints I have come across, especially with credit cards, that banks do not send their statements on time, right? And lot of people are used to seeing their bills end of the month, like the light bill, the water bill, the credit card bill, the bank statement. Now, here of course, it's everything happens at the end of the month, right? And also these offers turn up exactly when the bonuses are paid in the year for Christmas and the Sinhala New Year. Fantastic offers turn up. You know, it's so attractive. They say, like, you buy a TV, you get a washing machine free, but you don't realize you also have to pay for that washing machine you don't need. Or they tell you, we give you 35% trade-in offer, like you said, or the discount. Now, what is there, or rather what could people actually do in evaluating whether they should really spend the money? Like, I mean, is it a period we should use, or what do you think, the money side, or how would that tie?
Okay. That is where I have written a complete book on financial literacy, completely free for people to download from a website called www.cfasrilanka.lk. I repeat it, it's www.cfasrilanka.lk. Now, I have explained this whole managing money concept. That is where you need to know how you are going to manage your money so that you achieve certain goals. Be it a small goal like want to buy a smartphone. Now, you need to build up certain amount of money without getting caught to taking loan where you pay exorbitant interest. Now, a simple task like that, you need to have a goal. So, what you do is you have something called a financial plan. Your plan is to, within your income, say 10,000 rupees a month. Now, you have expenditures. So, you decide I can afford to take 5% out of that, or say 10%, say 1,000 rupees out of that, and save that 1,000 and spend the balance 9,000. So, what do? You take that 1,000 rupees before anything else and spend the 9,000. Whereas, a lot of people do is spend the 9,000 and then end up spending 9,800 and maybe left over with 200 rupees. So, first is discipline to take out your, to achieve your goal, which means commitment, which means perseverance and trying to achieve that within a certain period, and start saving. So, if you do that and have a plan of what you are going to spend, and then you see where your money is going, obviously you have a salary or some kind of income, but you know where your money is going, so you know where to cut off. Say for example, you have a habit of smoking, or you have a habit of having a coffee somewhere outside, you pay a lot of money for that. So, you may be able to cut down some expenses and achieve your goal, be it ultimately retirement even, which is very, very important for you to build up certain amount of money. Why we do that? We do that because once you have certain amount of money, money starts earning income for you that is much bigger than even your salary at some point when you get there.
Money works for you instead of you
Money
working.
works for you, and that's exactly what this whole booklet talks about.
Right.
Is that how you can get to that by following certain principles of saving money and with disciplined kind of goals which you set for yourself, depending on whether it's a car or house or foreign trip or whatever.
Yeah.
Ultimately you have a goal. You achieve that without taking a lot of loans, which is basically detrimental, because if you don't pay the loan, everything is lost.
Right. We will go in for a short break now. We will be back with Mr. Abeysuriya to continue this discussion shortly. Mr. Abeysuriya, one thing I would really like to know is, with this lack of financial literacy in this country, if we were to have maybe a utopian target of 60 to 70% of our people being to some point financially literate, how would it benefit our country?
Okay, there's so much of benefits. I think number one benefit could be we will not be appointing politicians who basically go and not serve the country, because you are much more literate. I call it more than financial literacy, political literacy, but you will be challenging, okay, what's happening in Sri Lankan Airlines, because a lot of money is gone already and more money is going, and whose money is that? Ultimately we pay for this. So there will be a lot of literacy, financial literacy, where you will understand the impact of various policy decisions which ultimately impact you. So that literacy is very essential. So financial literacy, if you have got, you will know simple cash flows, where money, it's all about money. From where is the money getting and where the money is going to. I earlier explained,
Yes.
you have receipts and payments.
The debit and the credit.
That's right. So, whether it is the government or the country, money doesn't come from the sky. You need to earn the money, whether it's a government institution or the same story. So, now financial literacy will help also the people to be much more foresighted and able to manage their financial affairs without depending on the government. Now, a lot of people today, after their retirement, take for example private sector, they take the EPF, and if they do not manage that money, so you are retiring at 55, you may be able to do some work somewhere else and earn some income. But when you are around 70, 75, you may not be able to work in some other place, small job, but you may have to depend on that EPF money you had. But by that time, you have spent the EPF also. Now, where is the money for you to live? You need some income coming on a monthly basis. Whereas the government pensioner, you will see, are able to at least get something at that time, because till you die you get the pension. Now there is a big difference also in the pension. When you retire, you may get 75% of your last salary as the pension. But 20, 30 years ago, after your retirement, that pension becomes extremely small because of something called inflation. That is where the value of money gets eroded, purchasing power gets eroded. We know 20, 30 years ago, a loaf of bread would have been 3 rupees. Today it may be 25 rupees. So there is that impact where you may have saved a loaf of bread, but you can buy only a slice of bread. So that issue will have an impact on pensioners, government pensioners. So overall, unless you build your nest egg, and we have one of the largest aging populations in the world, Sri Lanka is aging very fast, our age population will not have good life. So that also becomes a burden on the government, because they will have to find welfare schemes to support these people. You can't let them die.
That's true.
Okay. So that's one area. Another area is for corporates. The corporates, if the employees are unhappy, they will find always demanding salary increases and bonuses. So as a company, you need to manage your costs, revenue and costs, because if you keep giving more and more increments to the employees, you will find you are pricing out yourself. That's always the case. No, there is a limit at which you can price your product. You can't keep on increasing. So again, if you don't have financial literacy, you won't understand that. So then, if the employees are financially literate, they will manage their financial affairs much more carefully, so that they manage their money, their income, whatever, without being so dependent and having issues with financial trouble when you are in the workplace. So that's also good for a company and the country, because you have more people who are smart, who are able to manage their financial affairs better. Now this is the difference between, say for example, more developed countries than Sri Lanka, because our people, if you ask majority of the people, they are very, very unhappy about what they are getting. I am sure that's a normal case.
Normal case, that's very true.
But that issue is coming from lack of financial literacy, because you are not managing your affairs. You may be spending things on things which may be totally unnecessary, but that discipline, that thinking has not been given in our school system. Unfortunately, our education system completely lacks financial literacy. It may be available for maybe commerce students only, but there are a lot of other students, science students and all the everybody else who pass out from schools or maybe or universities, ultimately go to the workplace and having issues
like that. Yes. Very interesting, because some time ago there was an education system which actually had commerce for everyone. The NCG system, which they only had for 2 years, that had a very, very wide range. That was very useful. They had lots of other subjects as well, but then they for some reason opted to go back to the O-level system. What I would also like to find out is now schemes like we touched on earlier, where in villages there are what you call like microfinance schemes, which people like cultivators, small businesses, things like that borrow, and I have seen that they lose very big, I mean they lose their property, things like that. What should they look out for? I mean like we say caveat emptor, right? Buyer beware. They must know something that they should look out for when someone comes with this offer. This can't be this good.
Right.
What would you say is a warning?
Okay. First I will explain the good side of microfinance. The real microfinance is where the financier gives a helping hand for you to make a success of your venture, be it in managing your financial affairs, be it in marketing or some kind of support to increase the probability of success of your venture. Now if they do that, is well and good. Now what really happens is the person who takes the loan is basically pushed because of commission to the person who is working for the microfinance gets commission if you push a loan to somebody. Now that person ulterior motive is somehow or another lend, not checking the ability or capacity to repay that loan. Now that is where you get into trouble. Now if you are able to borrow 1000 rupees as our previous example, that is fine, because you can repay it end of the day or whatever time period. But if you are pushed to take 10,000 rupees, you may inadvertently spend that money and not be able to repay. Then what happens is you go and borrow from another microfinance, so-called loan shark, right, to repay the other previous loan. Then you get into a vicious cycle, and only way out, thousands of people commit suicide. Now I am in a central bank committee, and we see these statistics. So that is a major issue in this country, because these people are in the informal sector. They are not being served by established financial institutions like banks or finance companies, because they can't go, because they don't have steady income. If you have a monthly salary, it's very easy to get a loan. But these people are living, this is called informal sector, on a basic level of subsistence. They are basically earning for the day. So as a result, you can't go to regulated entities. So you depend on this kind of, so the danger is you may overextend. In other words, try to live beyond your means. If you do that, you get into trouble. Now these microfinance agencies who are unscrupulous, who are having agents who are basically driven by commission, are not interested in your well-being. They are only interested in pushing a loan. Whether you can recover that money is also not in their mindset. So this is the danger.
Now, speaking of pushing a loan, and that being the only motive, not even in the micro, now I have heard, I have spoken to a lot of people in other banks, major banks, their marketing section seems to have the same view. They lend, but they do not follow up whether that person is in trouble, whether it should be restructured, the loan, ultimately, when they send the debt collectors out, and which are very, from what I have heard, are very abusive and rude people, do they start negotiating, or then, they go into courts, and which I believe could have been handled better and nicely and more nicely, and I mean, both parties could have won, because if you know this man is slipping, at that time you can correct the problem, rather than let him go deep and then he is in a mess, you are inconvenienced and all that. So, what do you think? For me, it looks a little unethical, right? Because if you lend money to a man, I think you are also responsible to see that he can actually repay properly without losing his dignity, right, and his other property as well. What do you think this regulated financial institutions should do in that case?
Actually, I am a bank director, so I can say regulated entities, those are having strong compliance and regulatory purview, follow the rules, because otherwise it end up in the non-performing assets, in NPLs, basically non-performing loans. So as a result, any regulated entity will first of all make sure the capacity to repay. Obviously, certain loans go bust for various other reasons, maybe beyond the control of the promoter or economic reasons, but they cannot do this like a microfinance entity. Now, microfinance entities charge exorbitant interest. Usually, it may be as high as 50%. Regulated entities may charge 12%, 15%, 18%, somewhere around that. So now you see the difference. Now within short period, you can recover the principal. Default can happen maybe much later. So they may make some part of the money in the interim. The more bigger issue is that none of the microfinance entities are regulated. Okay, unless you are mobilizing deposits,
yes,
the central bank cannot at this moment regulate microfinance entities.
Why is that? Is the lack of regulation or what?
The issue is there is a new law which was brought in for microfinance, where the minimum capital requirement is 150 million. Now, the companies that do lend microfinance, other than the regulated ones, the regulated ones are finance companies. So any other microfinance company which is not mobilizing savings are smaller than 150 million.
So they don't have to do.
So they are basically outside the radar screen. And they are the ones who are basically doing most of the bad things, because they are able to, use, as you very correctly said, very unprofessional means to recover their loans. They can, put people to harass your wife or children, or go and spread about you to your neighbors. There are a lot of damaging type of activities they do to kind of recover your loans, who are, to recover. So those are not regulated.
Right. Finally, one briefly, I need you to tell, with the book you have written and all this advice you give, what exactly is your intention from a service point of view to the general public that you're trying to give in your own words?
Very good question, because what is it for me? So, we as CFA charter holders, which is a global institution which is based in USA, has this is the gold standard of finance. Now, we have learned all about finance at the highest level. It's like a master's degree, which takes 2 years of full-time study to basically earn the CFA charter. So, we felt Sri Lanka lacks financial literacy, as I mentioned. Sri Lanka also lacks entrepreneurship. Now, only about 7% of our people kind of get on with starting a venture in the working population, whereas other countries have much larger, 20% also, 21%. So, we have another element. So, to address lack of financial literacy and entrepreneurship, we wrote 2 booklets. Now, we wrote this with the help of Central Bank of Sri Lanka, because they are kind of educating the public on these issues, and they have also published Sinhala and Tamil booklets. So, we thought we will have these booklets in a website so that public can download and learn financial literacy on their own pace. They may want to read all about borrowing,
Yes.
or what to do when they get their remittances, or what to do when you get your EPF. All that material which I talked earlier is there in these booklets. These are very short booklets, about 26 pages, very nicely written. The financial literacy is written by me. The idea is to kind of improve the knowledge of average citizens of how to manage their financial affairs.
So, Ms. Abeysuriya, now I think the book you spoke of is on the website www.cfasrilanka.lk, and it is free to download in 2 languages at the moment.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think that's a nice service gesture you have done. Thank you for being with us. We hope to see you maybe on another program not very long from now. That brings us to the end of this program. We will bring another interesting personality on another good topic very soon.